Fiona Frick, CEO of Unigestion, has billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars in AUM. Fiona, a real pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Spain, what's your base case? What do you make of what's happening right now?
I think Spain is an issue because it's a very different issue than Brexit. In Brexit, it's the people saying that they don't want to be in the European Union. In Spain, it's quite different. It's people saying they don't want to be in Spain anymore, but they want to stay in the European Union. And it creates clearly some risk in the market and volatility because the European Union hasn't come out and say, okay, what would they do if Catalonia say they want to become independent? So I think we're going to live in next week some volatility and tension between Rajoy, the extremes of the Catalonian party, and Europe to see who says what and how the market will react to that.
So do you want to buy it? I mean, buy the risk was sort of the theme in the last few weeks.
It's true to say that when you look at Europe, and it's funny, when the Catalonia story went out with the people in the street getting arrested, etc. The funny thing which struck me is that the market didn't have any reaction, and it's like if they were anesthesiated about the event. I think at one point the market will wake up and see that, okay, this thing creates populist problems and it can become bigger, so I would rather not go to Spain for the moment.
The interesting part is the risk was really felt when it comes to Italy. I mean, if you look at spreads, you're seeing a lot more widening in Italy than you are in Spain. But just a few months ago, you said that Italy was an unexploited market in Southern Europe. Do you still feel that way?
I think the difference between Spain and Italy, in fact, Spain has done more reform in its banking system than Italy. So I think, and in terms of growth, Spain was a bit like the lucky child of Europe because it had a very important growth compared to the rest of the countries in Europe. What you could say is that Italy hasn't done everything that Spain has done yet, but perhaps they have been used to live in a sort of economical and political chaos for quite a long time without having a real government. While in Spain, perhaps this is more complex.
So that means that there's more catch-up potential basically in Italy. So where would you want to be investing?
I would spread my bets because it's really two different situations. Spain, really the beauty of Spain is that they have managed to build growth, and it was one of the regions which suffered the most in the 2008 crisis, and they managed to create a growth which was much less dependent on the financial sector. They managed to transform also the banking system but now there is these political issues that starts to be very confrontational.
But for Italy, I mean, do you want to buy banks? Do you want to buy bank debt? Do you want to buy NPLs? Like, where do you want to be in Italy?
I would rather be in equity than in the bond space.
Okay.
Because typically the bank system has not been solved yet, and the bonds are very expensive, and you see a move from investors which are invested historically for their deposit in bonds going more to asset management services. So I think there will be pressure on Italian bonds.
Let's just touch on UK for a second, because Lloyd Blankfein tweeted that he's preparing to spend more time in Frankfurt. He tweeted that today. Now, after Brexit vote happened, you actually opened a company's new headquarters in UK, in London. What's your take on the disaster of negotiations that we've seen?
So first of all, we had an office there. What we did is we expanded. And the idea was it's a talent market. It's one of the markets where you have the most diversity in terms of culture, nationalities, etc.
Yeah, but they all leave.
Not necessarily. But I think it becomes really a problem if the UK doesn't have the rights to trade in Europe as it had in the past. So for us, it's fine because we have other offices in Europe. But I could imagine a foreign company that used to have the UK as the basis for trading in Europe, then they have to find other solution. And it's going to be a complex situation. And the thing is, the more the Brexit negotiation is in the way it's happening now, which means no negotiation or no agreement, the more people, financial sectors or financial industry people will take decision to leave because the uncertainty will be impossible to manage. So even if they reach a deal, I don't know, in 12 months, it will be perhaps too late because financial companies will have taken the decision to go abroad. And you can see that with JP Morgan and etc., which are all day long saying that they're going to Frankfurt, they're going to Dublin.
Investing though, do you like investing in the UK?
I think it's interesting because there has been some opportunity because of the movement of the sterling. But the stock market hasn't reacted so much. So I think, again, it's a diversification. the sterling has been hit quite hard, so the market is pricing a lot of bad news about this negotiation. One could have surprise on the upside.
Let's take a look now at broad strategies. Macro hedge funds has had a really tough time. Jimmy Levin of Oz was speaking to one of our colleagues earlier, and he said macro strategies are just like a place you do not want to be. What do you think?
I think there are some trends which are very interesting in currencies, and the thing is sometimes the results are more binary, and there is not this asymmetrical kind of bets you could have done 5 to 10 years ago. So the problem is that typically with Brexit, you wouldn't find anybody today that has really a certitude of what's going to happen there. So you have to do macro bets, but you have to do them in a much more diversified, risk-managed way than you used to do in the past. And perhaps what becomes more important today is the sizing of your position and your discipline in stop loss and things like that, rather than just getting the opinion right. It's more like making sure that you're flexible and nimble enough to navigate in these markets.
So what area are you increasing your exposure to next?
So we believe in long-short strategies, typically. We found there's opportunity, especially in this period where there has been a very strong recrudescence of passive management. I think we had a cycle where passive management has outperformed active for a long period due to the liquidity of central banks that they have put in the market, money driving returns, return driving money, etc. I think there has been underperformance of some styles which have been very successful in the past, like value investing. And I think at one point we could see a reversal. Correlation between stocks are starting to go down again, which is a good sign, which shows that fundamental analysis are becoming more important than in the past, and that perhaps in the period of market where valuations are quite strong, there is more study about which are the stocks that could be interesting. So I would be quite positive on value investing typically. We are still positive on equity because we typically believe that growth is good in the world, and the most interesting thing about growth is it is synchronized between Europe, emerging market, and the US, which is a very strong argument to fulfill the growth going forward. We believe that inflation, there's going to be a reflation trade. So in this kind of environment, equity makes sense, and value makes sense because they are generally good in inflation environment.
One quick question: does Bitcoin make sense?
So it's a good question, and I see it as an asset class. And I think it will develop in an asset class. It has a lot of volatility, so I can imagine that asset manager can use it to speculate, and perhaps obviously you have potential for return. It is not for me yet a currency I would like to put my client in because it has a volatility that it's very difficult to know how rich you are or how poor you are. But I think it's becoming an asset class that will develop in the future. It's a new asset class, so it's normal that it has the volatility it has today. But I could imagine that going forward it will mature like other asset class has matured.
And you called it a currency. I feel like that made news. All right, Fiona, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Fiona Frick, CEO of Unigestion. Great stuff.